it's time for the fallout from round 12. Misano, Moto 3, Moto 2, and 2 MotoGP races from the weekend. And we're going to talk about today's test as well. Currently about lunchtime when I'm recording this, so we'll be talking about the first half of the test today. Now, in Moto 3, kid's starting to look a little bit scary, David Alonso, especially if you are a Moto 3 young hopeful. Maybe you're 18, 19 years old, still finding your feet, and this kid's just, he's like, I'm just here to win. And that is it. Sometimes with some of these talented kids, it can be like he's got all the speed and he's very, he's quite raw, and he just needs to figure out that last little piece to sort of get them that, does he know where to be on the last lap? Can he put his bike in the right place? Can he take those positions? Can he be aggressive enough? Does he know when to hold back? This kid's got it already. He didn't have to figure it out. It's just there. He seems to have this ability to have the bike in the right place at the right time on the last lap. Even when it looked like about halfway through that last lap, he was about third. He went for the move. I think he ended up back in third again, and then ended up on the second to last corner getting back underneath them both. They kind of took each other wide. I don't know if it's just luck he's getting in there and guys are just sort of making way for him a little bit by accident. Like, has he played a blinder there? Has he put himself into the lead at that point, knowing that he probably will get taken again, and then there's going to be another move made, which will mean that if you count the corners up, there's only one to go at that point by the time he goes into the lead, or two to go. Like, is he like a genius, or is he just sort of falling into place for him? I don't know what the answer is, but he certainly has a knack, at the very least, of being in that position. 3 wins from the last 4 for the kid. All of a sudden, this championship is livened up. Danny Olgado wasn't at the races this weekend. He had a goodish first lap to maybe try and tag on to the lead group, but he got beat up pretty quickly, and he's barely scored a point there, and that brings not only Sasaki to within 4 points, but the 4th place man, who is actually David Alonso, is only 21 points behind now, and even Ortola in 5th is only, maybe like 8 points or something back from that. So they're all on. So at this point, let me know in the comments, pick your winner now. And, maybe you'll win a prize or something. I don't know. I'll send you a quid if you get it right. It's going to get tight, this. And I still think I got my money on Sasaki, but he's going to need to win a race soon if he's going to back that up, because these other boys are going for it. Even Dennis Onchu's looking like a race winner now, and that makes him even more dangerous as well. But once again, Moto 3 just delivers in ways that no other motorsport can deliver. It is absolutely odds-on guaranteed that every week this is going to be a pure classic. I just can't believe it's so good. It's just so good. Now in Moto 2, there are no prizes being awarded for predicting in the comments who you think is going to win the World Championship, because, look, let's be honest, it's pretty much wrapped up, isn't it? I know points mathematically and things can go wrong and whatever, but he just looks so solid, Pedro Acosta. He just looks so solid. Complete control start to finish in that one all weekend. It was never in any doubt, really, was it? I mean, I know he wasn't on pole, but it was never in doubt. And just to apply a little bit of pressure again to the KTM boys up in MotoGP, whose jobs are now at risk. But that, I've got another video. I spoke about this last week, and my opinions on it haven't really changed, but you can go back and watch that if you want. I'll link it up above. And speaking of Vietti, who was on pole, another positive sign for him. He's just got the odd little good one left in him here. And look, it wasn't an accident, that period at the start of last season where he was so good. There has to be something there. I'd like to see him just stay nice and consistent in this mode now that he's in, just at least being in and around the podium a little bit. Because there's got to be something there to it. Arbolino, who I do think is quite good, but he's been on a poor run of results. He's not had anything higher than a 6th in the last 4 before Misano, and has managed to recover pretty decently to a 4th place finish here. He's done pretty well, minimized the damage a little bit, but he'll need to at least be within striking distance of Pedro at points in races where he can try and unsettle him a little bit, because he's not going to unsettle himself now, Pedro. You've got to sort of try and apply a bit of pressure, and I know it's easier said than done. You may never see him again, right? If he's taken off from the front like that. Something. You've got to do something. Come on, Tony. Give us a grandstand finish if you can. Oh, and finally, in Moto 2, the other big name in Moto 2, the mastermind himself, Jake Dixon, unfortunately managed to be outsmarted by 11 other riders this week. So, I mean, a bit of a change of form from his tactical genius of the previous race. Couldn't quite genius his way to a win on this one. A lot of big stories to come out of this week, I think. First one Obviously, the big double and a pole position for Jorge Martín, who was absolutely flawless under pressure, especially in the Grand Prix on Sunday, because even though we're talking about like Bagnaia injury, Bez was carrying injury as well. Obviously, they were doing well just to be that close, I suppose. But early in the race, where Bagnaia is breathing down your neck and he's looking to throw a wheel up the inside, and he's like the king of the late breakers in this field. He can do things while he's trail braking that the others can't seem to do. Even under that pressure, where he should normally, with his ability, be able to get a wheel up the inside of you and maybe unsettle you a little bit, he just couldn't. Because I don't know if that's not at his absolute peak self, but it seemed to me that it was taken out of his hands by Martin's excellent concentration and consistency to be able to hit those brake markers like clockwork, give absolutely no chance for Pecco to do anything to him. And then by that point, Pecco needed to do that early because he obviously didn't have the staying power to go the Grand Prix. He was hurting at the end. You could see that. Bez did well to stay in it and close the gap late on. I don't know if Martin was just cruising home, but Bez was quite good as well over the weekend, I thought. But it was not a great race. The early laps were fascinating, I thought, because you had the 4 leaders of the World Championship, all one after the other, chasing each other and just hitting incredible lap times, and the consistency of all 4 of them was brilliant. And we'll talk about Binder in the sprint race was the most entertaining thing of the weekend, I think. He was just an animal in that sprint race, and I absolutely was there for every bit of it. I absolutely love him. And that aggression to go after everyone in that race and make up those positions and end up coming up through the field a little bit, brilliant. But I think that his crash on Sunday is what robbed us of a really good race, because he would have been coming past really aggressively on these couple of Ducatis guys carrying injuries. Do they want to risk scrapping with Brad Binder in that sense? I don't know if he ever is going to get to Martin. He was, like I said, he was incredible, flawless over the weekend. But it did rob us of a little bit of a battle for maybe second and third, and maybe it would have brought Pedrosa into it a little bit more. But yeah, really unfortunate that he went down, because I think that was where the good racing was going to come from, was from Brad. On Pedrosa, big question being asked now, because all of a sudden the talk is all very, if Pedrosa can come and do this, the couple of Grand Prix that he competes in a year after being retired for like 5 years at his age, is the current grid not very good? And it's a question that got sort of spoken about during the weekend on commentary. There was 2 ways that it was being discussed by the commentators. The first way was, like I said, is the current grid just not that good? And when you have a guy of Dani Pedrosa's quality, and there were guys that were better than him, does that mean that the current group of guys are maybe only as good as what the second group of guys was back in the, in the alien days? Or is it just Pedrosa's a freak? Well, for me, that's the same thing. Because if you're saying it's because Pedrosa's a freak, then there was also 3 or 4 other freaks at the time. And everyone that was just like could never crack it with them. So you're talking about your Sete Gibernals, your Max Biaggi's, your Marco Melandris. Does that mean that the current group of guys, that surely just means the same thing, that the current group of guys is probably only as good as them? They'd be competing at the front with the likes of Bagnaia and Martin, Fabio Quartararo. So, is the question, is Fabio Quartararo and Pecco Bagnaia just like Sete Gibernal or Max Biaggi, Marco Melandri, Colin Edwards? I mean, I don't know. Like, what level are these guys? So what's my opinion on it? Well, the current, you're looking at Pecco and Fabio. Are you asking me, are they as good as, let's say, Stoner and Lorenzo? It's so hard to say. I don't think so. But again, you could sit here, by the time Pecco gets the end of his career on this bike, you could have twice the world championships as Casey Stoner. But it just felt at the time, when you're watching in that era, you were watching something special. You were watching Novak and Roger and Rafa, and there is a caveat with this Pedrosa thing and his performance over the weekend. And I'll get to that when we talk about testing after this. When I'm done talking about this, I'm about to talk about testing from today, and I'll discuss where that caveat is in terms of Pedrosa's performance. And it's like I'm having trouble articulating this, but my opinion on it is quite mixed. And so basically what we're saying is if Pecco and Fabio were around during the Alien era, let's say they got themselves on factory bikes as, a third Repsol bike or a third factory Yamaha bike along with Lorenzo and Rossi or whatever, and you just like, let's see how they crack on. Are they on that level? Are they competing every week? Are they winning 50 Grand Prix over their career like Dani Pedrosa? I'm not sure that they are. And Danny Pedrosa, being the one without a world championship, you have to say is the worst of the four of those original aliens. I mean, it is so hard to say. It is so hard to... I'll sit on the fence a little bit, but yeah, I do think that... I guess, is Fabio Quartararo just Sete Gibernau? Not that that's bad. Sete Gibernau was quality. You know, Max Biaggi, quality. Marco Melandri, absolute quality. But they were never quite that level. And you feel like that's probably where Pecco and that would have been running. Maybe competing, maybe spending a year as a rival for the title or something, but not sustained. A bit like Dovi, who really only came to the fore once the others moved on, but never really was on. You can never say Dovi was really on that level. Is Pecco just Dovi, but at the right time? Could be. Now, we're going to talk about testing. And because we're just talking about that, we'll start with KTM. They are testing different chassis today, and they have been testing them this morning. One of them is a carbon chassis, which is the chassis that Danny Pedrosa ran in the race. So here is that caveat about Danny Pedrosa's performance. Is he actually still absolutely flying, could still cut it at the top level, because when he was at his best, he'd be way better than the guys that are there now? Or is there really something in this chassis? Because they are good innovators, KTM, and they are proving to be quite successful with some of the innovations they're coming up with. And this could just be the next in the line of big things for them. Is this performance, did his carbon chassis just bring him up to like where Binder is? Of race distance kind of thing, with Brad still on the normal original chassis that they're running at the moment. Jack Miller's tested the carbon chassis this morning. Brad Binder hasn't yet at the time of recording, but he's come in over the morning session and he's gone, I think it's about 0.3 quicker than his qualifying time from the weekend. Now, I think that time was set on the carbon chassis because that's what we've been told. I've just watched Simon Crafar on the lunchtime report thing on YouTube. As far as I could tell, they just mentioned he's been running the carbon chassis. I think he's done that lap on the carbon chassis. So if he has, there could be a lot in this chassis. This could be a huge innovation for them and a huge step forward for them if he's already doing that. They've also run another version of a steel chassis this morning. He could have set the time on that. But I think there is something in this carbon chassis, and I think that evidence came through in Danny Pedrosa's performance as well. So I'll contradict myself a little bit on what I said before about the field and maybe not being quite as good, and that's why Pedrosa is still competitive. I think the carbon chassis is probably giving him a leg up this weekend. So like everything ever, there is no one ultimate truth. There's not one thing or the other. The balance, as always, and the truth lies in between. There's a little bit of that aspect, there's a little bit of that, and somewhere we found ourselves at Pedrosa coming fourth. He's both better than the current crop of riders when he was at his peak, but he also has been helped a little bit by what I think is probably a very good chassis and a very good upgrade for KTM. And as far as I believe, Binder will run that chassis this afternoon, possibly, so we may see where it is actually at, and I'm sure we'll get some feedback on it. Again, like I said, Miller could have done his time on the new steel chassis. I don't know, because they have run both. I is what I could gather. The other, I mean, we talk about every manufacturer in this test, but really there's not much else to talk about with the others. They are obviously got upgrades, they're trying things, but it's not going to be as big as maybe as a carbon chassis or the main story, which is Marc Marquez and Joan Mir with the Honda. We're hearing from this morning, it is what would be the direction of the 2024 bike, being described as maybe a 2023.5, but it is a completely new chassis and a completely new direction, running what I think is the current engine. It was interesting to hear Simon Crafar talk again when I just watched it now, that from what his understanding of it is, and I always appreciate his insights, he's very good on the technical level, Simon Crafar, that most of the grip that they're missing or what they want to find, 80% of that grip comes from the engine. The way the engine performs, the way it does everything. You're not going to find that gap through electronics, aero, whatever. So on that, how much can you really get out of this where they're testing all new parts but maybe not a new engine? I don't know. Whether he's just being coy or he's being completely honest with us, Marc Marquez this morning is saying that it's still a long way off. And I've got the quote here from him this morning. It's a bit different in the riding position. So the geometry is a little bit different as well. In the beginning, it was a bit strange, but lap by lap, as with a new bike, it becomes more natural. But in the end, the way to ride, the way to look for the lap time is similar to the current one. Of course, you can always expect more, but still it's the first impression and there are many new engineers in the garage. So now with that information, they must work and keep going. They need to work, still we are far. And that's the main quote that people are taking out of this, still we are far. They're reading into it as like, they're still way off. He's not happy with the direction they're going in, blah, blah, blah. but does seem a little underwhelmed. But at the same time, what can you expect from just a new chassis and just a bit of a change in the geometry and kind of a new kind of direction? The first time's always going to be a bit weird. And if Simon Crafar is right and 80% of where your grip is going to come from comes from the engine and you're still running the 2023 engine, then how big of a difference can you expect to see just from changing aero and chassis and geometry? So, and he goes in later on in the interview to talk about his future, and he has different options, a couple of different options going forward, and he'll decide maybe after India or Japan or blah, blah, blah. We do think he has meetings with the factory or with the big bosses when he gets to Japan. So basically, I think it's too early to tell. And I think he would probably know that it's too early to tell whether that bike's going to be a success or not. It could be a cracker, but you've got to get used to it. You've got to get used to the way you ride it and the way you find your lap time and the way it feels and the riding position and all that stuff. And you're not going to know until you get the new engine in it, are you? So unless he's waiting for Valencia to see if they put, but by that point it's too late. You're going to have to have either said you're staying or you're going to have to have signed with someone else by that point. So he's going to have to just take a punt on him, or he's going to have to abandon. But he'll have to make that decision based on the knowledge he gets from today, and maybe a discussion with the big boys at the head office there, if they can assure him that they're bringing something or bring people in that can do something, which is, I think, the bigger point. We're off to India, and I'm really excited about this actually. Like you talk about growing the sport, is there a bigger biker nation than India? I mean, everybody's on a bike or a scooter or something. This is a huge market for MotoGP, and I'm glad we're going there. I mean, as it stands at the minute, circuit does not have homologation yet, and we're going there in a couple of weeks, but it's all going to get over the line. It's not going to be a problem. Just, it'll be ticking a box now. Go there, make sure it's all good, tick the box, and off we go. We're going racing in India. Cannot wait. Talk about going to Grand Prix and different places and using Grand Prix traveling as a way of seeing new places. This is a perfect one to do that. So put this one on your list, guys, if it stays around on the calendar for more than a year or two. If you enjoy these Fallout recaps from the Grand Prix, I've got loads of them for the other Grand Prix, but also I've got loads of other videos that you might like. So you can click on one of them here, and we will see you on the next one. Take it easy.